जो मेरा नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन है वो ये है कि इंडिया में एक डिजिटल क्रांति स्पेशली जियो के बाद तो हुई एंड ई कॉमर्स सेक्टर की भी एंट्री हो गई एंड अब एक ऑर्डिनरी इंडियन सिटीजन भी ऑनलाइन जो परचेजिंग है वो इजीली करता है
जी।
तो अभी जो कार्नी की जो ग्लोबल कंसल्टिंग फर्म है उनकी रिपोर्ट आई थी कि अभी जो लाइफ स्टाइल मार्केट है उसमें जो ई कॉमर्स सेगमेंट है वो $4 बिलियन के आसपास है एंड 26 तक वो फोर्थ टाइम बढ़ करके कुछ अराउंड 20 बिलियन हो जाएगा एंड 2030 तक $40 बिलियन तक हो जाएगा।
yes.
तो आपको क्या लगता है कि ये जो आप आंकड़े देख रहे हैं तो क्या फ्यूचर है ई कॉमर्स का इंडिया में काफी अच्छा या ये ही ई कॉमर्स ट्रेडिशनल मार्केट को खत्म कर देगा और सिर्फ ई कॉमर्स ही रहेगा या फिर दोनों पैरेलल एग्जिस्ट करेंगे?
आई थिंक इट्स वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन। आई थिंक दोनों पैरेलल चलेंगे। ऑमनीबस जो बोलते हैं इंडस्ट्री में, ऑमनीबस चैनल्स ऑनलाइन ऑफलाइन हाइब्रिड रहेगा। नंबर्स में पर्टिकुलर सेगमेंट का तो मैं कमेंट नहीं कर सकता, बट आपने जो एक डायरेक्शनल बोला है कि मल्टीपल टाइम्स हो जाएगा 2025-26 में 2030 तक, इट साउंड्स अबाउट राइट। इफ आई एम नॉट wrong, around 2 to 3% of the Indian GDP right now is e-commerce, so maybe $70-80 billion होगा इस साल। and like अगर हम चाइना का एक्सपीरियंस देखें, it will grow much faster than the GDP, so as a percentage it might increase to 5-6-7%, 8 maybe even 10% by early 2030s। बट इसका मतलब नहीं कि ऑफलाइन रिटेल पूरा खत्म हो जाएगा। इसमें दो तीन इश्यूज हैं। MSMEs, see the pace of change, if it's too rapid it's disruptive। किसी का बिजनेस आपने बनाया हुआ है, आप suddenly that guy goes out of business in 3-4 years, obviously that is painful, right? तो गवर्नमेंट ने इसमें दो तीन चीजें करी हैं। एक तो कि they have been more strict about Flipkart and Amazon, and we must remember Flipkart is now owned by Walmart, so it's a foreign owned company। it was started as an Indian company, then Singaporean incorporated, etc। they can only technically be marketplaces, right? They can't have their own inventory. Now they have certain workarounds for that, but they're enforcing it more strictly so that Indian जो seller है उसके लिए एक competitor के साथ एक channel भी बने बेचने का, right? I mean, so I think offline Khalid and I have been discussing, right, about handicrafts and this and that. So they don't produce everything and sell their own white label goods. You use this as a additional mechanism. Therefore, there is a win-win situation. Similarly, I think Reliance Jio is coming with models where you can use WhatsApp to order something and local Kirana store can sell, right? Because anyway, many of these Kirana stores are actually buying in bulk from, if not B2C, B2B kind of platforms. So it's not as competitive as it sounds. There is a lot of kind of hybrid cooperation as well. And if you look at many of the small traders and businessmen, anyways, their next generation is kind of transitioning to a service role kind of job, right? So that nobody has any delusions that everybody will continue to live in that small setup, because we know that does not work, right? Whether it's small farms or small businesses, everything is about scale as the economy gets richer. As we were discussing in the first segment, it's all about scale, specialization, productivity. It's just that the transition needs to be slightly more smoother, that's all. And government ONDC एक framework लेके आया है, One Network Digital Commerce, where they're trying to say कि Amazon, Flipkart, इन सबकी listings cross list sell हो सकती है. So it's still in early conceptual stages. And by having a clear demarcation between foreign and Indian, even online retailers, the idea is we build our own digital giants, right? So उसका corporate tax का profit, उसका share price के values, वो उसका कुछ इंडिया में भी रहे, ना कि सब के सब बाहर जाए. And finally, it's not just the e-commerce, but broader digital revolution जो आपने बोला, जिसको मैं digital public goods बोलता हूँ. The fact that the UPI has like crossed more than $1 trillion in transfers a year, which is, as I was saying, we are actually on the cutting edge of financial payments infrastructure, even compared to much richer countries. And that उसका जो ease है कि मैं 37 rupees भी देना तो extent में हो गया, right? किसी का phone number डाला, उसे कुछ ना कुछ करके और पीछे connected है, and वो it's just done. या फिर आजकल वो QR कोड के थ्रू, जो चाइना में एक पर्टिकुलर QR कोड का बहुत बड़ा रेवोल्यूशन हुआ था, but not so much on this kind of payments back end. So even if you're not the leading, we're definitely one of the leading, even if you take a less optimistic kind of take on it. So उससे बहुत सारे transaction, आपके एक pain points, transaction friction cost कम हो गए, right? It's just so easy to, for example, take an Ola and Uber. उसके बाकी के जो problems होंगे, वो cash driver मांगे तो अलग बात है, but the digital payment has become so easy, right? That you're entering the car, you're just leaving. Otherwise पहले आपको देना पड़ेगा, फिर वो change देगा, बोलेगा भाई साहब change नहीं है, अच्छा वो पान वाले के जाके change लेके आते हैं, उसका 10 मिनट गया, आपका 10 मिनट वेस्ट गए, right? It's just, and multiply that across all kind of payments, whether for food or for e-commerce or so on and so forth. Um, and it's just booming. And what happens is this formalization data, and we're still in the early stages of that as well. Let's say you're an MSME, right? You're selling now more and more through these electronic channels. You're getting payments through these electronic UPI. You might even be advertising on Instagram, etc., depending on the product. That data is building up. GST में e-way bills आ रहे हैं. You can go to a bank or an NBFC or a fintech in a couple of years and say, look at my transactions. I don't necessarily have a flat to use as a loan against property collateral, but my business is consistently profitable and growing. This data is what it is. It is verified by the Indian tax department or so and so and etc. This is GST or some relevant data. आप इसके खिलाफ मेरे को लोन दे सकते हैं. You can see that there's a real business with a clear trend, right? What is known as like cash flow based lending as opposed to collateral or asset based lending. So uska bhi ek, so we're again in the early stages. There's no like overnight koi jadoo nahi hai isme. But so that allows, because that is being recorded. पहले अगर आप अपने खाते में पेपर में लिख रहे हैं तो उसका क्या वैल्यू है, whether you fudge the numbers or not, if there is a mistake or not, but this can be cross verified. This is what Nandan Nilekani calls like knowledge utilities, right? He's one of the big technocrats behind this chain. Of course, there are other people as well. And again, cross-partisan. He was earlier with the Congress, but he was happy to be a large part of Prime Minister Modi's vision as well. So this thing that's happening, where in some other countries they've kind of left it to private players. The private players can do other things, but like one of the reasons Visa and MasterCard were very pissed about Indian Rupee and UPI was because trillions of dollars, they were taking small amounts, but small amounts on trillions of dollars are a big amount. And if it's a very government-based free platform, then they lose a large market for that future revenue and profits. So the government is saying कि we will create the basic digital infrastructure, the backbone. उसके ऊपर plug and play करके आप अपना business करें, और उसको भी आप hybrid करके आप उसको modify करके, if you can create value, monetize that. But basics अगर मैं, it's like the equivalent of building a road, right? I mean road बना दिया, उसमें आप जितना use करेंगे उसका आप toll देना दे लीजिए, but road बनाना जरूरी नहीं कि खाली government से हाथ उठा लेगा. There are many things there, right? Land acquisition, etc., etc. So they've built the basic public digital infrastructure goods very well. अब इसमें health card बन रहा है लोगों का, health ID बन रही है. I'm forgetting the Hindi word they use. I just made my own ID a week ago. Ayush, नहीं Ayush तो वो, right? So अभी तो right now उसमें खाली आपका vaccine certificate linked है, but going forward all your health records will be in one place, right? You also have what is that app? DigiLocker, जिसमें आप you just click, आप OTP based आपका driving license download हो जाता है. आपका जो भी कार रजिस्ट्रेशन है आपके नंबर से, आपके आईडी से रजिस्टर्ड है, वो आपने कोई लीव एंड लाइसेंस अग्रीमेंट किया है 11 महीने वाला, वो आ जाएगा. So now you don't have to be afraid about losing these papers. Not only that, many of them are official documents. Right? If you don't have a license with you, you just show that to a police officer. Technically, that is the Government of India documentation. So just the ease of living, right? When you are in the right, but गलती से कोई पेपर खो गया, imagine the harassment पहले लोग कैसे बिजली का बिल दिया करते थे, कैसे फोन को रिचार्ज करते थे, कैसे टीवी को रिचार्ज करते थे. These small things which have just become touch and go, right? And of course, it's happening globally. India में कोई unique नहीं हो रहा है. We've just done it a bit more smartly.
Right. इसी पे शो हमने मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया है उसने पॉलिसी कितनी अच्छे से ड्राफ्ट की है ई-कॉमर्स को लेकर के.
So e-commerce, as I said, multiple stakeholders, right? You want more and more competition. At the same time, you don't want all the digital giants to be American, or for that matter, any foreign country. So you want some digital protectionism is not the right role, but you want some domestic giants as well. At the same time, जो MSME है, जो बहुत ही छोटा सा किराना दुकान है, वो रिलायंस से उसको कंपटीशन बहुत गर्म आए या अमेज़न से, उसको क्या फर्क पड़ता है? तो आपको उसको भी एक ट्रांजिशन रैंप देना है ना, राइट? सो यू हैव टू हैव डोमेस्टिक जायंट्स टू compete with the Amazons and Walmarts of the world. You need to give a ramp off for many of these kirana stores for them to become efficient in collaboration with these players as opposed to in direct competition. So I think overall the e-commerce strategy has been good. We have threatened to use our market power where relevant, and often not done it, which is also good. If you threaten too often, then also it's not worth it. Then also it backfires, right? For example, the way Americans are perhaps overusing sanctions right now. So it's just a balance of is what you can call geoeconomics, right? You're trying to use your market power, and the idea is not to actually do it too often. So we are it's a balance. Sometimes they'll overshoot this way, sometimes they'll overshoot that way. But imagine, right? आज से 10-15 साल पहले बहुत बड़ा debate था इंडिया में FDI and retail, FDI and retail. Now the whole thing got sidelined because of this e-commerce window, right? This is a classic case of public policy debates getting modified radically because of this kind of, you just enter a new technological domain, right? You just kind of the old reality just does not matter that much. FDI still matters, but now that retail is e-commerce retail. Like something that we can discuss some other time. Like India may, like, obviously this non-veg thing is a big debate, but maybe 20-30 years from now, the technology is still incipient. Some kind of authentic but not actual animal meat or lab developed meat might become globally popular. It's still in early stages. It might take 10-20 years. If that happens, then that bioethical debate or quote unquote religious debate becomes less relevant, because maybe all countries will, if not stop, but reduce the killing of animals, because they say you can get protein and a similar taste in this different way. Debates often change because of technology. And that is a classic case of what happens in Indian retail. You kind of just leapfrog, right? That's why.
But also, like, I mean, as we understand from you, and it's been such a knowledgeable class, understanding from the financial, very objective part of it, and without being politically biased. This is the century for India. This is the present as the future. Demography is what you and some of the top experts have said is the strength. But also as laymen, sometimes we feel, even though that's the strength, that is also the weakness at times, right? Would you vouch for something 5-10 years later, that of course in a democracy you can't say like China, like a 2-child policy and all, but make the third child more expensive to have, like, or would you, do you think that is not a matter of concern at all? We as laymen are reading it wrong. I mean, that's fine, even if the population, it'll reach a plateau.
See, I think the trend is already very much towards fewer children, and maybe the trend is a bit ahead of what perception is.
Okay.
Now, as you very well know, this question is not just about economics. In India, there is a religious cultural element as well, right? So that is a separate issue, because there is a sense that a particular demographic is rising faster in numbers, and therefore that has different political overtones.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe people might have a third child disincentive in some forms. We will never do it very coercively in India. It clearly backfired during the emergency under Sanjay Gandhi and I think Jagmohan and other people at that point. And while there is, even adjusting for socioeconomic differences, a slightly higher kind of fertility rate for Indian Muslims compared to Indian Hindus, that percentage difference remains, but overall the trend for both is actually down. So I think it's a balancing point. I would not be surprised if population control is discussed, with the subtext being this kind of religious, communal, civilizational angle, and there are valid points from both sides there. But on a purely economic point of view, actually this is fighting the last battle, right? Like generals are always cautioned not to fight the last battle. So the problem in the world and 10-20 years later in India also will be falling population growth. Not rapid growth. Of course, what that components relatively percentage-wise is a separate debate. Now, also, it feels often that India is very crowded. Yes, 400 people plus per square kilometer is, by historical standards, crowded. But if you visualize 1 kilometer multiplied 1 kilometer, it's very actually a huge number, right? So that's 100 hectares. In that sense, it's not large. It's just that Indian cities we need, as you were saying, more successful tier 2 towns. We need better infrastructure. Like Bombay, this Trans Harbour Link was conceived, if I'm not wrong, like decades ago, not 10, 20, like 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. This Mumbai, Savory to Navi Mumbai, Navashava kind of link, wo ab jaake 1-2 saal baad banega. Like Delhi had metro 10, 15 years ago before Mumbai. Like Mumbai is obviously much more dense. Why was that not made? This coastal road, पूरा मुंबई आपने सी से आपने रिक्लेम किया, but suddenly we become environmentalists कि आप एक समुद्र का रोड नहीं बना सकते. So these basic kind of balance, right? Common sense. Environmentalism is good, but if you have such a massive concentrated city, why not just make one bridge on the side, which now we are making with the coastal road? Mumbai, for example, just to take the same example, same city again, has a massive Sanjay Gandhi National Park on the top. बीच में बड़े बड़े parks नहीं है, right? Like we don't have a Hyde Park or Central Park. आपने बहुत बड़ा एक almost forest आपने city के ऊपर डाल दिया, बीच बीच में आपने parks नहीं बनाए. So हमारी कुछ urban planning की भी problems रही हैं. बैलेंस की बात, तो प्रॉब्लम है कि एक्टिविस्ट दोनों तरफ में बहुत एक्सट्रीम हो जाते हैं. फिर पॉलिटिक्स आ जाती है. अपने मुंबई मेट्रो को आ रहे उसके चक्कर में थोड़ा स्लो हो गया था. अभी जो बुलेट ट्रेन है वो थोड़ी स्लो हुई हुई है. बाकी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट अच्छा बन रहा है. सो ये इस टाइप की इश्यूज हैं. बट ऑन द होल द पॉपुलेशन इज less of a problem than some people think, but of course with all these various nuances there.
Right. And Harsh, when is your book releasing?
Let's see. When I finish writing, it's always it is quite difficult to write. I mean, I don't, unlike some people, I don't enjoy writing. You know, I think people enjoy writing fiction. I enjoy the process of getting the idea out, but I actually learn a lot from the writing. Like, and if you're trying to write a quality book, it was always much more difficult than you imagine, right? You have to like read 2 layers deeper than to write at the 2 layers above that. So you have to basically read 10 to 100 books to write one good book. Sorry, one good chapter of that book, not the entire book. So it's always, but I'm trying to finish it within this year, in the next few months. Hopefully before July, August. I mean, one date to aim at is 15th August, right? Because the Prime Minister also has given the call, this Amrit Kal.
75 years of Azadi Ka Amrit.
Yes, 75 to 100 years, right? And so 15th August, kind of 2020 to 2047. Symbolically, it's kind of
Absolutely
relevant. But you know, let's see how the writing goes.
Right. So viewers, please buy Long India whenever it releases, hopefully 15th August, and also the previous 2 books which Harsh is co-authored, Derivatives and A New Idea of India, especially A New Idea of India. Amana, anything in last comments? We have 2 minutes to go. For me, Harsh, thank you. It's been amazing, the masterclass
Khalid,
in objective economics.
talking.
To explain it to laymen, because हर कोई expert बैठा होता है, technical jargon, simple चीजें नहीं.
I mean, it's not like I'm technically, I'm more on the investing side than a quote unquote professional economist. The only good thing about that is when you are in the markets, you're forced to be objective and relevant to data, because if you're too ideological, then you lose money, right? So you can have your own biases, but you are forced to face reality. That's all.
Now, what do you want to say?
Amna, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying कि best wishes for your next book, and बहुत अच्छा था ये सेशन. मुझे भी बहुत कुछ समझ में आया. मैं खालिद को यही बोली थी कि जब इकोनॉमिक्स की बात आती है तो मुझे समझने में थोड़ी दिक्कत होती है, बट ये वाला सेशन काफी अच्छा था. And now I can whenever I need to ask any question on economics.
No, बिल्कुल, we can do this again also, but I think economics को थोड़ा सा actually आप जो बोल रहे हैं ना, बहुत ज़्यादा mathematical तरीके से पढ़ाते हैं, so बाकी लोगों को भी थोड़ा सा इसको एक human element के साथ समझाना चाहिए. It's really not that complicated. It's basically about human incentives. It's just people make, जो बच्चे पहली बार स्कूल या कॉलेज में उसको फिर मैथमेटिकल मॉडल्स देखते हैं, उनका इंटरेस्ट चला जाता है एंड उनके मन में एक बायस हो जाता है, विच इज ऑल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट. बट वो आप एक्सपर्ट इकोनॉमिस्ट को पढ़ाएं ना, आप एक बेसिक इकोनॉमिक का एक नैरेटिव तो समझाए लोगों को कि कैसे होता है, इंसेंटिव्स क्या होते हैं, ग्रोथ कैसे होती है. देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ कॉम्प्लिकेशंस, बट इट डजंट मीन यू कांट एक्सप्लेन. सो थैंक यू, मुझे अच्छा लगा, आप लोगों को थोड़ा फायदेमंद लगा. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Hopefully, my dashboard will be a fademan again.
Okay, thank you everyone. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and show it especially to woke kids who get depressed by all these depressive ideologies. This is India's century, and Harsh vouches for it, and all of us, I'm sure, do vouch for it. Thank you so much.